Hello, stargazers. Today I'm going to give you just a real quick examination of the inauguration coming up. Now, fair warning, this is not a report for somebody who's looking for something light and fluffy. We got some stuff ahead of us. And also, the caveat with all things predictive is I could be wrong. This was posted January 17th, 2021 at 12:37 p.m. on primalgirlwellness.blogspot.com. The Pied Piper as a real-life story. Without revisiting the obvious, it does appear that our twice-impeached president is the Pied Piper leading the rats out to the sea, since everyone who has gravitated to him for the obvious and morally repugnant reasons are now being served heaping, helping doses of irony that would make any form of poetic justice seem like an amateur effort. Moving forward this week, we have the inauguration and new administration to look forward to. The inauguration chart looks grim since it is carrying a void of course moon in late Aries. That is the same degree that we had Mars in late Aries that brought you the white supremacy terrorist attack on our capital and our democracy on January 6th, 2021, or, as it more appeared like to the rest of us, the zombie apocalypse of 2021.
This is now the United States of Zombieland.
I want your brains.
Which brings us now to the 2021 U.S. Presidential Inauguration Astrology chart. This chart presents some problems in terms of event planning and production, even without our zombie friends attempting to kill everyone in their path, that still has a functional brain. The first thing is the void of course moon in Aries that we mentioned earlier. The saving grace, if there is one, is that it is at 29 degrees of a sign and in the 12th house of the chart. This tells me that the event will not start as planned and, like a bomb being neutralized by detonation and containment, something significant will cause the delay in the proceedings. But let's be serious here. It would have to be something serious in this case because we're talking about a presidential inauguration, not a child's birthday party. What is also happening is that in some schools of thought, the moon isn't actually void of course because it's still within tight orb of an aspect, even though it's an out of sign aspect. If we go with that train of thought, it isn't the moon conjunct Mars Uranus aspect we're looking at here, but the moon squares Sun Saturn aspect that keeps it from being void of course. Saturn definitely rules delays, hindrances, and obstacles, so we're getting a reinforced suggestion of delay here. I am expecting a mass disruption of communication at this time. Either communication lines, communication distribution, or anything else that would be clearly seen as sabotage, silencing, or muting messages that would absolutely impact the masses. Like the Christmas 2020 terrorist attack in Tennessee, but maybe not so physically explosive in terms of square miles. Now, the last aspects of the moon should give us some info on what has happened prior to the event, in this case, the inauguration and or the delay of it. The last aspect the moon made was a square to Pluto on the midheaven. We could read this as the terrorist attack on the Capitol on January 6th being described here, and it would be accurate. We could also read this as a singular attempt of assassination on the president's life. Now, which president being threatened at this time is the better question. The moon being on that terrorist attack on Capitol Hill with Mars at 29 Aries is unsettling, but like Mars was then, it is a domineering, impulsive placement. The moon in Aries at this degree, stirring up the dredges from the January 6, 2021 pot of hard feelings and might makes right mentality, appears to make one more final attempt at unsuccessfully tipping the scales in its favor. The moon rules the 4th house of land, physical ground, home, and foundations, as well as the innards of something, the guts, the belly. This all describes the January 6, 2021 activities very well, so for now, we will assume this is the past event being suggested here. So, is it an inauguration? Yes or no? Here's the problem. If the moon is void of course, and there is no delay, we can still expect this presidency to either not accomplish a lot or for Joe Biden not to be able to fulfill his duties throughout his term, which would put Kamala Harris in charge as a substitute. Neither of these options are ideal. As far as Kamala, she's a show pony with very little experience that matters at that level of government, and she also creates a love-hate response in people, which is not helpful when you're talking about an already fractured country where almost half the country already hated you before you started. He, let's face it, is an old man who's operating on vanity as much as he has good intentions. Any politician who spends nearly his entire campaign name-dropping Obama, but offering no actual plans or well-thought-out ideas during debates, and actually signs off on an ad campaign that displays him showing off his Corvette collection and talking about how good a driver he is, is nearly as dumb as some of these Republican upstarts clamoring for Trump's discarded base for the 2024 elections. Listen, I don't hate Biden or Harris, but given the field of thinkers and doers that we had to choose from, the only upside to these two is that they aren't Trump and Pence. Now, let's go back to moving the chart forward again. Once that 12th house moon leaves Aries, the moon will move into exact square with the sun, and then a couple degrees later, Saturn, both in the 10th house. By March, we can expect everyone to be very clear and very visible on whose side they're on. The people/principles, which is Saturn in Aquarius, or finances and the status quo, which is Moon in Taurus. I would expect events around this time to clearly show who the players are going to be for obstructing and interfering with any progress this administration can make, as well as a possible thou shalt not pass major hardline action that stops some major things in their tracks. What or who are these major things? Good question. Let's see how this plays out in the USA. This also suggests a 4-year administration and national vibe that will dig their heels into the ground with more committed positions for or against than before. Imagine this being like hard lines drawn in cement instead of drawn in the proverbial sand. The call to put up or shut up will be this administration cycle, and no one will be allowed to sit on the fence and play the I don't follow politics game anymore. Social cowardice or cowardice of any kind will no longer tolerate or get a free pass. Silence is complicity, after all. Moon squaring Saturn shows blocks, hindrances, and obstacles. Much like the Obama years, but now even more sinister. With Mitch McConnell anywhere near the congressional seats of power, you can expect him to continue doing what he does best. Undermine, meddle, and sabotage. And finally, of note, Saturn in Aquarius also represents cynicism and distrust of Big Brother. Communities within communities may develop stronger ties and self-interest in self-policing to keep trouble outside of it. That's the good news. But the cynicism and paranoia about Big Brother, surveillance, and further loss of privacy/autonomy may also create communication islands where critical info is denied coming in or going out that could also serve those communities. And that's bad. We shall see. Remember, optimism is a discipline, and realism is not cynicism. Sidebar. Cynicism serves no one except the asshole who's done nothing to help, but instead stands around gloating while saying, I told you so. No one loves or respects that person. Don't be that person. While the moon moves from the degrees of Saturn to Jupiter, Mars, Uranus, we can expect building tension instead of a release from it from this inauguration. This will likely culminate in an explosive showdown this summer. I haven't had a chance to pinpoint exact months or dates, but I'm looking at July, August of the first year, which would be just in time for Congress to take its summer vacation, which is in August, if I remember correctly. So far, so many reasons to want to stick your head in the sand and not come back up, right? Well, here's the good news. Later in this administration, remember this chart represents 4 years of this administration, we will turn a corner and start moving to green pastures, economic recovery and social unity and alignment again, with all the peace those things bring with them. It will largely be from the efforts of women in the administration and the grassroots. And surprisingly, Many of these women, representing the majority, will find themselves at loggerheads with the leadership of Joe and/or Kamala. Ms. Harris, being a woman or a woman of color, will not give her a free pass on her misdeeds and shortcomings in terms of innate qualification for the job required of her. This may come as more of a surprise to her than it does to anybody else. In this administration, by the time we get there, those in the country who weren't hating her because of her sex or race will still also not give her a free pass because of her sex or race. Remember, these Capitol Hill terrorist zombies will come after you just because you aren't one of them. The rest of us are only coming for you because you aren't doing the job you were hired to do, or you're doing it badly. Being a woman or being a person of color just means that we had higher expectations of your empathy, understanding, and broadness of vision. Things that both of these appointees are going to need a lot more of than they started with if they expect to be seen as anything more than barely better than the traitor-in-chief that got us into this mess. Final thoughts. The goddess has risen. Look around you at all the key figures of courage, conviction, and principles who have stood tall, spoken truth to power, and did it to protect all of us, not just their personal interests, throughout this previous administration and moving forward into this one. All women, and these are all descendants of the goddess, just like you and I are also. At any moment, you can claim your birthright by operating like the descendant of a goddess would, by acting for the good of all in the face of evil, injustice, and inequity. And all with one simple tool they have all used: speaking the inconvenient truth.